he's also eloquent. I'm a little disappointed. I saw him before we came out of the break. The man of the house, his dog is not with him. He, of course, from CBS Sports, Frank Nobilo. My friend, good morning. How are you?
Very good, thanks. That's Gary. Selena's actually my wife has taken Bison out so that he doesn't interrupt our chat. But yeah, this is Viore, so my little competition to your Peter Millar. So
nice brand drop. Well done. Nice placement. There's so many things I love talking to you about, and I want to ask you about Scheffler in this respect. To contextualize what he's doing, because of what he's doing, there's an invocation of that guy, Tiger, and people reflexively go, how dare you? What's the most sensible way to contextualize what he's done in relationship to that guy?
Well, we're going to start like that. No, honestly, I think it's great because, you know, as we get a little older, we actually forget, for example, Jack Nicklaus. And there's a lot of people that are watching golf right now that have, to be perfectly honest, never seen Tiger Woods play. So on one hand, the Scottie Scheffler conversation at least allows people to realize how good Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods were. So from that point of view, I think it's always good to have the conversation. But then when you start to, you know, drill down, there are comparisons. They might play the game differently, but their ability basically to just soar everybody off for second place. They're both ruthless in the most athletic way. I don't think Tiger or Scottie ever played for money. And that's admirable. They're powered. It's a bit like Chariots of Fire, where they're powered by a different source. And I think that's what makes them great. Obviously, him winning his 20th event last week was huge because it puts him in that elite category, which everybody's already talked about, 4 majors, 20 wins before the age of 30. So the comparisons have been flooding through probably for the last 18 months. And people would say, well, that's not really fair. Tiger Woods, you know, the 82 wins, the 15 majors. But, you know, Scottie's in the prime of his career. And the biggest comparison, Gary, I would say, is their ability to close on Sundays. I really can't remember Tiger Woods making a mistake when it really counted in the biggest events. And Scottie is getting eerily close to that. He just suffocates the players on Sundays. The other difference, I guess, is I remember Scottie's mistakes, for example, like his tee shot in the water on 17, because everything else just looks like he's having a Sunday drive with one hand on the wheel. Tiger Woods looked different. It was always a highlight package. It was the chip in at the moment and all that. But they both have that amazing ability to just sort of suffocate the opposition.
I think that word is a great word. There is this sense that, yeah, can he pull off a hero shot? Sure. And that's the thing that Tiger has. He has a catalog of those shots, which is an amazing sizzle reel. You're a huge tennis fan, Frank, and tennis is a matchup sport, and golf can be. When you look at benchmarks of greatness, are there things that are transferable from these two sports, one you cover, both you love?
Very much so, Gary. I've always used tennis as a comparison, and believe it or not, motor racing. Motor racing for the technology that's affected the game a lot. And tennis, because for a start, the 4 biggest championships in tennis, one of which is going on this week, the Australian Open, they're all owned by a different body other than the professional body, not dissimilar to golf, i.e. the Masters, the 2 Open championships, and the PGA Championship are owned by those respective bodies. So the professional body doesn't really have any control on the biggest events, yet the players continually talk about the fact that the benchmark is major championships in both sports. Then when you start to go into what determines a great player, you're going to use those major championships. So, for example, Jack Nicklaus 18, Tiger Woods 15. And if you want to use a tennis comparison, then you've got to add in things like the Grand Slam, which Rory just won last year. Nick Faldo has unabashedly said Rory becomes the best player, the greatest player ever in Europe, because he has won the career Grand Slam, even though he's one shy of Nick Faldo's 6 majors. So when you look at tennis, Djokovic, not only does he have the most majors in 24, he also has the Djokovic Slam, right, which I think was 2015-16, if that serves me right. And world number 1 and the like. So golf has those comparisons. Tiger Woods 15 majors, but also his career slam. So does he get added points for that? 2000, 2001, when he competed that slam, throw in the Players' Championship as well. That's a year that has never, ever been replicated in golf. So he should get bonus points for that. And then also the wins themselves, 82 versus Jack Nicklaus at 73. So, yeah, I think there's very, very similar benchmarks. And then I think the final one is who you play against. I think from a tennis point of view, this era that we've just basically gone past, Federer, Djokovic, and Nadal will never, ever be replicated. Well, at least probably not in my lifetime. But if you flip it a little bit, popularity comes in, i.e. if Federer had a year, for example, like Djokovic had with a career Grand Slam, would that tip him above Djokovic? I think the Federer fans would say yes. And I think that's where you get the analogy with golf. There's still a lot of people, myself included, that think that Tiger Woods has played the best golf. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities.
The Koepka thing, from the moment it got, we all got this idea that he wanted to return, and then he does. Look, that's a win for the PGA Tour, and they're celebrating it, promotion. And the way the event itself is being marketed, he's front and center this week, added hours of a broadcast window tomorrow. You guys are going to, you'll go deep on it this weekend as well. What added value does him playing well, whether it be immediately or eventually, add to the big win of him simply returning?
Well, I think it's a great question, Gary. And just going back to the previous answer about major championships, 5 majors.
Yep.
And also the first live player ever to win a major championship. Obviously, Bryson followed that up the following year at the US Open. So it is a big win. There's no question. Right now, we are in the muddied water between the LIV and the PGA Tour. And I don't know how long that's going to continue. But while it does, each side celebrates a win. For example, Thomas Dietrich, who will not defend next week, has gone to LIV. So LIV is saying, hey, we've got Thomas Dietrich, we've got Ben Arndt. So there's no surprise the PGA Tour or us as broadcasters on this side of the fence are going to celebrate Brooks Koepka. But I do look beyond that because I've followed Brooks's career basically since it started, since he and Jordan Spieth both missed Q School in 2012. Brooks went to Europe. Jordan decided to go on sponsors' invites, and then they both corralled their way back to the PGA Tour. And Brooks is sort of that good villain, which I think we've lacked over the last few years. People don't sit on the fence with Brooks, and I think that's also what we need on our side of the fence.
The contraction that it appears, I was joking, that a movie title could be The Road to Contraction. There was a movie title similar to that, because it appears that's, Frank, where we're headed in 2027. So how can less feel like more?
Well, we can get Tom Hanks for a start. That's petition, right? Yeah, but then someone's going to die.
Exactly.
Yeah, if I put my player's hat on, I've never believed that, less is more, right? But I actually, I applaud what Brian Rolapp is trying to do. Hopefully I'll get a chance to meet him at Pebble Beach. I've heard a lot of things about him. So he is taking a different tack. If we can make events bigger, the feel of them bigger, then I get it. And I think one of the ways to start that is to start rotating. And we've talked about this for 15 years, really, rotating the FedEx Cup venues.
Yep.
Coca-Cola sells all over America, not just in Atlanta. FedEx flies everywhere, apart from, Memphis. And, of course, BMW sells cars all over the world. So I think, to be fair, BMW has at least tried to rotate some of its venues. But I can imagine a day when the FedEx Cup playoff is, for example, on the West Coast in prime time. And to me, that would be worth watching because you'd be looking at it from a different venue point of view. So there's a newness to it. And therefore, there's not a home field advantage to Rory, for example, at Eastlake. So I like the intangibles in that. So in that respect, I think we can make some of our biggest events, signature events, and the playoffs certainly go up a notch. And that I applaud. But like I said, as a player, you don't really want bye weeks, But we do have to rattle the cage. We can't take everything as given, and just because we've done it for the last 50 or 60 years, we have to do it the same way.
Yeah, Frank, I agree that, and I also think that a mini rota, that how this is for these facilities. Like the idea of swallowing hard and going, okay, it's over. We'll have our first planning meeting for next year next week. I think you can think ambitiously about venues that may be less inclined to go on an annual, and you go, no, just once every 4 years, and let's do a one-off, and maybe you'll like it, and maybe we can revisit that. And I agree with you wholeheartedly about the West Coast and climate and venue and primetime hours on the East Coast later in the day at the end of the summer, all of that. Meritocracy, it's a great word. It's an even better word if it really is being applied. Relegation and elevation in this sport. Look, the dimple heads get into it, and they're watching this channel. How can relegation and elevation be a dynamic that can be good for the product of the PGA Tour if it really is applied with merit?
Yeah, I believe it's essential. Sadly, because of the situation, the split in golf, it's less of a bargaining chip because you don't want your top players to leave either side. And that is actually hurting us a little bit. I don't like the idea of having no cut, for example, and just saying, well, okay, you're in tier 1 and you're in tier 2 and tier 3 and whatever. I've always thought golf was this. I've just had a visit from Bison, which is a little scary.
No, it isn't.
Bison is my dog. Yes. Hey, boy.
Come on, it's Dogs of the Week today, Frank. Pick up Bison. Let's celebrate the man and how he ran away.
He's going to snub me again.
Okay.
Completely losing my train. I've always thought golf was this huge funnel. And that was the beauty of our sport. It didn't really matter where you come from. For example, a kid growing up in New Zealand, didn't matter where you played. Eventually, you wanted to get into this funnel, and then it would spit out champions. That was the beauty of it. If we become, like I said, tier 1 and tier 2, and we stop that, that's the biggest problem. Because for me, golf was always the beauty of the game, just like the amateur game. You show up on the first tee, you've got 18 different chess matches ahead of you. You don't know how it's going to pan out. You're against the field. They're all playing at different times. So somehow we all get them together. We cut a few of them out, cut a little bit of the weeds from the chaff, and then we determine who's going to win come Sunday afternoon. The unpredictability of it, just like the game itself, was always beautiful. It was a beautiful mess, in my opinion. And I don't ever want to see that change. So it is a hot topic because you do have some players now with a lot of clout that are in their 30s and they realize they can pad their own nest right now. I think that's the one problem that we do have to avoid.
I always appreciate the conversation. Have a good first week. I look forward to seeing you soon enough. Hi, Serena. The boss is back in the office. We'll let Frank go. Bison's hanging around. We would have put him on Dogs of the Week, a little spontaneous add to the Dogs of the Week, which is at the end of the show. We've got to get Bison on at some point. He doesn't obey you because he's smart. Well, there he is. There he is. We add Bison to Dogs of the Week. Frank, thank you, my friend.
Cheers, my man.
Okay.
Have a great year.